My family stole $50,000. My grandparents left me for college. But when I sued them and won, I forced my parents to sell my spoiled sister's car to pay me back, and now she's working at a coffee shop while I'm living my best life. I'm 20 years old, studying architecture at university, and I need to tell this story because I literally just won a lawsuit against my own parents, and half my family hates me for it, but honestly, I don't regret it one bit. What happened was so messed up that I still can't believe they're capable of something like that. But anyway, I guess I should start from the beginning so you understand why I had to go this far. I grew up being basically invisible in my own house. I have a younger sister, Allison, who's 18 now, and from the moment she was born, it was like I stopped existing to my parents. I'm not exaggerating. I mean, when I was little, I thought maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe I was just jealous because I wasn't the only daughter anymore. You know, normal sibling stuff. But looking back, and after what happened, I realized that no, it definitely wasn't normal what I lived through in that house. Allison was the golden child. Like, she could literally do whatever she wanted. And my parents would always find a way to justify it or just straight up ignore her screw-ups. Meanwhile, I could get straight A's in school and not even get a good job. But if Allison brought home a B, it was cause for a full family celebration, like she'd won the Nobel Prize or something. I remember once, I was like 13, I won a state-level art competition. My drawing was going to be in this important exhibition, and everything. And my parents didn't even come to the ceremony, because that same day, Allison had a soccer game, a regular game, local league, nothing special. And when I told them it hurt that they didn't go, my mom told me I was being selfish, that I needed to learn to share the attention. I was 13, and they were already telling me I was selfish for wanting my parents to be proud of me. And things kept getting worse over the years. Allison always had new clothes, the latest iPhone, a new computer every 2 years, classes for all kinds of things, trips with her friends. I wore her hand-me-downs when they didn't fit her anymore. My phone was a basic one I shared with my mom, and for any extracurricular activity I had to find scholarships or I just couldn't participate because there was no money. But curiously, there was always money for whatever Allison wanted. You know what I mean? And the worst part was, when I pointed this out, they told me I was being resentful, that Allison was more social and needed more things, that I was more reserved and didn't need as much, as if the fact that I was quieter meant I deserved less. But what really broke everything was when I was 16. Turns out my dad's credit card statements started coming in with huge charges, like purchases at expensive stores, restaurants, a bunch of stuff online. We're talking about like $5,000 in 1 month. And guess who they blamed immediately? Yeah, me. My dad accused me of stealing his card. My mom yelled at me that I was a thief. How could I do that to them after everything they'd done for me? Which, honestly, I never knew what exactly they'd done for me. But whatever. They grounded me, took away my phone, my laptop. I couldn't leave my room except to go to school. It was horrible. So, like 2 weeks later, my dad finds a package hidden in Allison's closet. Inside were like 10 new shirts, all with the tags still on, from crazy expensive brands. And when they confronted her, after a lot of crying and playing the victim, Allison admitted it had been her. That she'd found my dad's card in his wallet and had been using it to buy herself stuff. And you know what happened? Nothing. Literally, nothing. My mom said Allison was going through a difficult phase and needed understanding. My dad said it was a mistake and everyone makes mistakes. They never apologized to me. Not one apology. Not one acknowledgement that they'd accused me of something horrible without any proof. When I asked for an apology, my mom told me not to be dramatic, that they didn't need to. Apologize because it was natural for them to suspect me first since I'd always been problematic. Problematic? Me? The one who'd never gotten into any trouble, who got good grades, who basically lived trying to be invisible so I wouldn't bother anyone. That night I called my grandpa, my mom's dad, crying. I told him everything. Absolutely everything. Not just about the card, but years of feeling like the black sheep of the family without having done anything to deserve it. My grandpa, rest his soul because he was the best person I've ever known in my life, got furious. He told me to pack my things, that he was coming to get me. And that's what happened. He showed up at the house like an hour later, had a huge argument with my parents, told them they were shitty parents. His exact words. I'd never heard him talk like that, and took me out of there. I went to live with him and my grandma, And honestly, those were the best 2 years of my life up to that point. With my grandparents, I felt loved for the first time in I don't know how long. My grandma taught me to cook, helped me with homework. We went to the market together on Saturdays. My grandpa took me to museums, bought me architecture books, because he knew that's what I wanted to study, listened to me talk about my projects and my dreams. They went to all my school ceremonies, my art exhibitions, everything. They made me feel like I mattered, like I was worth something. And the best part is, they never talked bad about my parents in front of me, although I know my grandpa was very disappointed in my mom. Once I heard him on the phone with her, telling her she was raising a spoiled brat and neglecting her other daughter. But my mom just yelled at him that he didn't understand anything and hung up. During those 2 years, I barely talked to my parents. They'd call me occasionally, but the conversations were always awkward and cold, and they always ended with them asking me to come back home, but not because they missed me, but because it looked bad that I was living with my grandparents, like they'd done something wrong. They never acknowledged what they did to me, never admitted they had a favoritism problem, and I didn't talk to Allison at all. Honestly, I didn't want to know anything about her. Everything changed when I was in my senior year of high school. My grandpa had been in poor health for a while, he had heart problems, and one morning he just didn't wake up. He died in his sleep, peacefully. But for me, it was devastating. My grandma lasted like 6 more months, but it was obvious she was fading without him. She said everything hurt, that she was tired, and one afternoon, while we were having tea in the kitchen, she grabbed my hand and told me she loved me very much, that she was proud of me, and not to worry because I was going to be okay. She died that same night. I was 17, about to graduate, and I lost the only 2 people who had really loved me unconditionally. The funeral was weird. My parents were there, obviously, but it was all very formal, very cold. Allison didn't even go, said she had final exams and couldn't miss them, which, well, says a lot about her, doesn't it? After the funeral came the reading of the will. Turns out my grandparents left me their house, completely paid off, plus a fund of $55,000 specifically for my college. My grandpa had left a letter explaining that he'd seen how my parents treated me, that he knew they were never going to help me with college, and that he wanted to make sure I had the opportunities I deserved. When the lawyer read that, my mom turned red with embarrassment, and my dad just stared at the floor. They didn't say anything, but I knew they were furious. With that money, I was able to pay for my entire first year of college without problems. I sold my grandparents' house, he couldn't maintain it, and honestly it hurt too much to be there without them. And with that money plus the fund, I thought I was going to be able to finish my degree without debt, which was a dream come true. My parents knew about the fund, obviously, because they were at the reading of the will. The money was in an account that technically was in my grandpa's name, but with my name as beneficiary, and when I turned 18, it would automatically transfer to my name, or that's what was supposed to happen. When it came time to pay for my second year of college, I went to the bank to make the transfer, and I almost had a heart attack when I saw the statement. There was $5,000 left. Of $55,000, there were only $5,000 left. I couldn't breathe. I literally thought I was going to pass out right there in the bank. I asked the employee to check the transactions, that there had to be an error, but no, there was no error. There had been large withdrawals during the previous year, all authorized with my dad's signature, who apparently had been added as a co-holder of the account when my grandpa was alive to facilitate deposits or something. I don't know exactly how it happened. I left the bank shaking with rage, called my dad and asked him what the hell had happened with my money. At first he played dumb, said he didn't know what I was talking about, but when I told him I'd already seen the statements and his signature was on all the withdrawals, he changed strategy. He told me we needed to talk in person. I drove to my parents' house. He was already living in an apartment near the university, shared with 2 roommates, furious. When I got there, they were both there, my mom and dad, sitting in the living room like nothing. I demanded an explanation, and my dad, with the calmest face in the world, told me they'd borrowed the money for Allison's 16th birthday, that they were going to pay it back, but they needed the money at that moment, and it was a family emergency. A family emergency. Allison's birthday. I asked them how much exactly they'd spent, and my mom, like it was the most normal thing in the world, started explaining that the party had cost like $35,000. They did it at an event hall, with a live band, all imported decorations, a dress that cost $3,000, the whole thing. That they'd bought Allison a new car for $12,000, and the rest went to a trip to Europe. They took the three of them as a birthday gift. $50,000. They'd spent $50,000 of my money, from the fund my grandpa had left specifically for my education, on a ridiculously expensive party and luxuries for my sister. I started yelling. I don't even remember exactly what I said to them, but I know I said everything. My mom started crying, saying I was ungrateful, that they'd raised me, that families should support each other, that Allison was only going to turn 16 once in her life. My dad tried the guilt trip route, saying my grandparents would have wanted the family to be united, that this was what family did, support each other. I told them they were going to give me back every cent, immediately. My dad laughed. He laughed in my face and told me they didn't have that money, that it was already spent, that I was exaggerating, that I still had $5,000 left, which was more than many students had, that I should be grateful. I left that house and drove back to my apartment crying with rage. I couldn't believe they'd done that to me, that they'd robbed me like that, because that's what it was, a robbery. During the following weeks, I tried to reason with them. I sent them messages, called them, begged them to please give me back the money, that I needed it for school, that without that money I was going to have to leave college or go into horrible debt. Nothing. My mom blocked me after a while. My dad simply stopped answering my calls. Allison sent me a message saying I was being dramatic, that it was just money, that I should get over it. That's when I decided to sue them. I went to consultations with 3 different lawyers, and all 3 told me the same thing. I had a solid case. My grandpa had made it very clear in his will that the money was for my education, only for my education, and my parents had used it for something completely different. It didn't matter that my dad was a co-holder of the account. The money had a specific legal purpose, and they'd violated it. I hired one of the lawyers, the one who seemed most competent, and told him I wanted to sue my parents for the $50,000 plus interest and legal costs. When my parents received the lawsuit notification, there was an incredible family mess. My mom called all the uncles, all the cousins, all the extended family, painting me as a horrible daughter who was suing her poor parents for money, that I was ungrateful, that I was destroying the family. My phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls and messages from relatives telling me I was a disgrace. How could I do that to my family? That family problems are solved at home, not in courts? What none of them knew was that I'd tried to resolve this at home for months, and my parents had completely ignored me. But of course, my mom didn't tell them that part. Allison sent me a super long message telling me I was ruining her. That because of me, now my parents were stressed and sick. How could I be so selfish to sue them for something that was already spent? That anyway, the grandparents were dead and didn't care what happened with the money. That last part hurt more than I want to admit. I answered her just one thing. The grandparents loved me. They never loved you because they saw exactly what you were, a spoiled and selfish child. And I'm glad they're dead so they don't have to see what you became. I know it was cruel, but after everything that had happened, after years of being treated like trash while she was the princess, I didn't care. I blocked her everywhere and haven't spoken to her since. The legal process took like 8 months. It was exhausting, stressful, and there were moments when I wanted to give up because the family pressure was unbearable. But my lawyer kept me focused, reminded me why I was doing this, showed me all the evidence we had. We had the bank statements. We had my grandpa's original will with the letter explaining the purpose of the fund. We had the receipts from Allison's party because my mom, being the person she is, had saved everything to show off on social media. We had the car invoice. It was an open and shut case, honestly. My parents tried several ridiculous defenses. First, they said the money was for the family, not just for me. The lawyer showed my grandpa's letter that specifically said, for Lauren's college education. Then they said they had contributed to the fund too over the years. The lawyer showed the bank records proving only my grandpa had made deposits. Then they said I'd given them verbal permission to use the money. The lawyer asked why. Then I'd been asking them to give it back. For months before suing. They had nothing. Absolutely nothing to defend themselves with. And I think they knew it from the beginning, but were betting I'd back down from family pressure. The judge ruled in my favor. He ordered my parents to pay the $50,000 plus interest, plus my legal costs, total like $58,000. He gave them 90 days to pay or foreclosure proceedings would start. My mom cried in court. My dad looked at me with a hatred I'd never seen in his eyes. And I felt, I don't know, empty. There was no triumph in that moment, no satisfaction, just this enormous sadness that it had to come to this for them to take me seriously. As was obvious, my parents didn't have $58,000 in cash to pay me. They had to sell Allison's car. That same $12,000 car they'd bought her with my money, plus a bunch of her stuff. I think my dad took out a loan too. Honestly, I don't know all the details, and I don't care. Allison had to start working at a coffee shop, because suddenly my parents couldn't pay for everything for her like before. Apparently, my parents also told her they weren't going to be able to pay for her college, that she was going to have to take out student loans like everyone else. Honestly, it gave me a bit of satisfaction knowing that I'm not going to lie. Maybe it sounds vindictive, but after years of watching her have everything while I had nothing, seeing that she was finally going to have to work for something seemed like poetic justice to me. What I didn't expect was for my parents to contact me like 2 months after I received the money. My dad sent me an email because I'd changed my number and had them blocked everywhere anyway, saying they needed to talk to me urgently, that it was about Allison. Obviously, I didn't answer him. He sent me like 10 more emails, each one more desperate, until finally in one he explained what they wanted. Turns out Allison had applied to several universities, but they were all very expensive, that she'd been accepted to one that cost like $30,000 a year, that they needed help paying for it, and if I could forgive what had happened and help my sister with her education, because after all, we were family, and my grandpa would have wanted the family to be united. I couldn't believe the nerve. After everything they did to me, after robbing me, after ignoring me, after everything, they were asking me to give them money. And not just that, but they were justifying it with what my grandpa would have wanted. My grandpa, who rescued me from their house because he couldn't stand how they treated me. My grandpa, who left that money specifically for me because he knew they were never going to help me, and now they wanted me to use the money he left me to help the daughter they always preferred. I answered one email. I told them no, never, that the 3 of them could go to hell, that I had no family, that to me they were dead, and if they contacted me again, I was going to get a restraining order. And I followed through. I changed my number, blocked them everywhere, asked my apartment, roommates that if they ever showed up at the door not to open it. I cut all contact with extended family too, because they'd all taken my parents' side, and I didn't want to know anything about any of them. Now I'm in my 3rd year of architecture. I paid for my entire 2nd year with the recovered money, and I have enough for the 3rd too. For the 4th, I'm going to have to take out a small loan, but nothing compared to the debt I would have had if I hadn't sued. My grades are excellent. I'm in an exchange program for next semester, and I got an internship at an important architecture firm for the summer. I have friends, I have a life, I have goals, and all without my family. Sometimes I feel bad about how things ended. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I think about my grandparents and wonder what they'd think about all this. If they'd be proud that I stood up for myself or disappointed that I destroyed what was left of the family. But then I remember what they did to me. Not just the theft, but years of making me feel like I didn't matter, that I was worth nothing, that I was less than my sister in every way, and it passes. I don't owe anything to people who treated me like that, no matter if they're my blood. Last week I saw a post from Allison on social media. A friend sent me a screenshot because she has me blocked too. She's still working at that coffee shop, taking classes at a community college because apparently she couldn't afford the expensive university she wanted. And you know what? Good for her. For the first time in her life, she's learning that things cost, that you have to work for what you want, that not everything is going to be handed to you. Maybe if my parents had taught her that from when she was little instead of giving her everything, she wouldn't have ended up like this. But that's not my responsibility. It never was. I guess the point of telling all this is that sometimes doing the right thing means breaking with your family, and that's okay. Not everyone deserves to be in your life just because they share your blood. And if someone steals from you, no matter who they are, you have every right to defend yourself and demand justice. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about that.